Welcome back to another episode of the Lendr podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lendr. Lendr is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lendr helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lendr. You can check that out by going to joinlendr.com. That's Lendr, joinlendr.com. Now, onto the episode. Okay, first things first, we have some quick housekeeping items. Quinn and I will both be at the American Lending Conference, and that's September 3rd and the 4th in Las Vegas, Nevada. We are going to have a booth there set up for Lendr, and so if you happen to be at that conference, definitely come by and say hi. We'd love to meet you. So, okay, diving into this episode, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be really juicy. I spent 2 days at Alex Hormozi's scaling workshops in Las Vegas, probably about 6 weeks ago, and I've just kind of been busy compiling my thoughts and making sure that I really had a lot of key takeaways, which there were so many of them, but I really just want to make sure that I had everything kind of laid out perfectly so that I had a really cohesive episode with all of like my main takeaways. So first things first, I want to go over kind of the structure of the event and how that all worked out. So the main reason for me going to the conference or the scaling workshop was not so much for my private lending company, but specifically for Lendr. I really just wanted to be able to scale that and really just like remove any bottlenecks or any things that may be in the business that we can't really see or foresee. And it absolutely did that. It was absolutely super impactful. So I do have some key takeaways for like our lending company as well, which I will talk about in just a second. But the biggest thing really was just I really wanted to focus on that business, and it was huge. It was transformational. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about the event, kind of the key takeaways there, talk about our private lending company. I'm also going to talk about my biggest takeaways and whether or not the workshop was worth it or good for you to potentially do if you're thinking about that. So take all that for what it's worth. Okay, so first things first, it was a jam-packed 2-day workshop, and it was busy. There was very little time in between. There were very little breaks. Like you felt like you were drinking out of a fire hose. The morning of the first day was 9 a.m., I believe was on that Monday that we went. And the first thing that I noticed was, it was really cool being at the acquisition.com headquarters in Vegas. Like it was very neat to be able to do this at the location where everybody is housed and works. It was surreal getting out of the car and seeing the acquisition.com logo on the outside, because I had seen it on, so many different YouTube videos, and it was just weird being there, but it was so cool. One of the first things I noticed is the team was so polished. The process was just so smooth. Everyone was so professional. Everybody was so friendly and warming and welcoming. I feel like they had planned for all the little contingencies. For example, there was a little hiccup with my badge, like the company name was wrong, and anyway, whatever. But it was like they didn't even like skip a beat. They're just like, okay, cool, and then just like typed it up really quick and boom, print, and like within 30 seconds, I had a fixed badge. And so it was just all these little tiny things, like they had planned for complications and they knew exactly what was going to happen within. And I know that's a dumb example, but I was just very impressed that it was just like, they didn't even miss a beat. So that was really, really cool. The whole flow, the onboarding, the sign-in, the setup, the meals, the meet and greet, the one-on-one sessions, the Q&A, like it was just, everything was so perfectly curated. The flow and the process of like taking my card and making sure that I had all the email follow-ups and all the information that I needed. And this is where you need to be, and this is where you need to expect. And like, just everything was so smooth. And that to me was a huge takeaway that like, ooh, is my onboarding process, is that kind of clunky? Are there things that I can take away to just make sure that it's seamless and plan for the unexpected? So very, very, very cool. Another thing, which random, I know, but the food at the event was unreal. I know that's dumb, but I was just very impressed. They had a drink fridge that was just stocked full of drinks. And you know me, I'm a caffeine connoisseur, and the only downside is there was no white monster. So that's kind of like, a little ding there, but it was just like everything was perfect. The meals, I was fully expecting to have, cold deli Subway sandwiches, and that was not the case. It was catered and it was delicious, and they had chicken and steak and fresh vegetables, and it was just, it was good food. And I don't know why I expected that not to be that way, but basically I think if you're kind of getting my drift, like the whole event was just above and beyond. You can tell that they had really put the thought into really making it a step above. And so I really, really, really loved that. The headquarters was awesome. Very, very cool. I know I touched on that, but it was right off the Vegas Strip. So it was fun because we had some fun in Vegas, but also I was there for business as well. And so the location was great. There was a meet and greet before the morning of, and I didn't necessarily get there early. I didn't really necessarily care. Not to say that I'm against networking by any means, but I was really there for the material and I wanted to absolutely have that as a takeaway. And so that may have been more valuable for some people. For me, it was not. So anyway, we got there. There was a quick meet and greet, coffee, light snacks, and then we got right into the sessions. So a lot of people are curious, what was the cost? It was $5,000 per seat. I just went by myself. I didn't take a partner or anything like that, but there were people who went in pairs, and so obviously planned for that. But of course, obviously, you have to take on, travel and flights and lodging and hotel and rental car and anything like that if you need to account for that. So all in all, realistically, it was probably $7,000 to $8,000. For me, it was worth it, 100% worth it to do that because I have already implemented certain things in my business that have far beyond repaid that dollar amount. So for me, that was very, very valuable. The class size was around 100 people, and it was grouped by revenue, which was interesting. And so you kind of had these like breakaway groups, but it makes sense now, but like they're not going to stick you in a group with people doing 10 million a year in revenue if you're only, barely making 50,000 a year or whatever it is. And so that was cool. It was fun to be able to rub shoulders with people who were kind of in your similar group. The one thing I was surprised by was you have direct access to Alex's team, but not necessarily Alex himself. You got a ton of not really one-on-one time, but like your breakaway group had a lot of one-on-one time with the various like head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of whatever, the head of onboarding, the head of HR, the head of whatever. And so you could ask all their questions and do those things. I thought there would be more FaceTime from Alex. There really wasn't that much. And so it's okay. It was just something that I had not expected. Now, the agenda and the design was, in my opinion, the best. It was action-packed, jam-packed, back-to-back material, and there was no fluff. It was like you really do feel like you were drinking out of a fire hose. There was just so much coming at you, which is great because it was a ladder, and all the information that they gave you kind of tied up into this overarching principle that they were trying to portray, which I will get to in just a second. But all of these things kind of ladder up to this overarching framework, which they call the value accelerator method. And the value acceleration method is really just like it says, how do we accelerate this value of our company? What are the things that we can do to add value to our business? And what are the value detractors? What are the things that we can stop doing that make our business less valuable? And so very, very cool. Now, the reason behind this and how this whole started, they kind of gave this backstory. I vaguely remember hearing this a couple times that Alex was talking on his podcast or other YouTube videos or things like that. But they shared this story, and what it was in the early days of Gym Launch. And they were talking about one day, Alex and Layla, they were going for a walk, and they, at this point in their business, they were doing around $4 million a month. So Alex and Layla were taking a walk, and they looked at each other and said, I hate this. And which is funny, right? You would think that if you were making $4 million a month, you would be happy, but that obviously was not the case. And they were just drowning. They were frustrated. They were overworked. They were tired. They were stressed. And there was just all these different fires and things going on. They're like, yeah, we're making a ton of money, but this is not the life that I signed up for. This is not what I want. And so Layla at one point was like, wow, maybe we just shut it down. Like, we have plenty of money. We don't care. Like, let's just shut it down because this is not worth it. And Alex said, maybe this is something that we can sell. And so what they did was they talked to a buddy of theirs who either had an introduction, I can't remember exactly what they said, but either had an introduction to like a PE firm or was an investment banker or somebody like that had a network. And so they called him up and they said, how do we sell this thing? And he basically said, you can't. But we can get you there. And so this investment banker took them through all of the different items that had to be done first in order for them to be able to make this sellable company. And the funny thing was they gave this analogy, they gave this example. They're like, have you ever tried to sell a house, right? And so you go to sell this house, and what you do is before you sell the house, you clean up all the little like things that you have been putting off forever. Like, you've got your honey-do list. You need to clean up the yard. You need to do this. You need to paint the garage door. You need to like patch that little thing in the roof. And like, you do all those things, right? And then you get ready to sell it. And the funny thing is that by the time you go through and you fix all of those different items, you're like, this house really is not that bad. And so if you had just done those things in the first place, maybe you wouldn't even have wanted to sell. And so they gave that analogy. They said, we couldn't sell our company. Like everything was not in order, but they gave us the checklist of all the different items that we had to do in order to make it sellable. And then at that point, we kind of didn't really know that we wanted to. They went on to sell it anyway, but they said, wow, this is such a better company now because we have done all these things and we put all these frameworks and structures in place. Now it's a well-oiled machine. Like, why do we want to sell this? And so the whole thing was, A, let's increase your value. Let's remove the value detractors and let's make it so it is a sellable company so that you're not like stuck in this trap where you feel like you're a slave to your business. And if you want to sell it at that point, you can, but if not, it's okay because it's a well-oiled machine and you can just keep it. So that was kind of an interesting thought to walk through. I'm not going to go through all the value detractors and the detractors and all that different kind of stuff that we talked about just because this episode would be way too long. But some of the core things were like key man risk, like if you are the head of the company, if you're on all of the marketing materials, if you are running the show, and if you got hit by a bus tomorrow and the company stalled, you have key man risk, which more often than not, most businesses do. And that's okay. That's like one thing that they said to me, which was really valuable, I thought, was if you're less than $1 million a year, of course you have key man risk. Don't even worry about key man risk until you're at $3 million a year. I was like, they said, if you're in startup mode, of course there's going to be key man risk. But if you get to the point where you're starting to think about selling, then we can start implementing some of those things. So that was really cool. Okay, so there were two main frameworks that they talked about. One was the theory of constraints, and the second was building a sale-ready company, which kind of talked about already. But the theory of constraints, they basically said, picture your company as like a series of different pipes, and the flow that's going through these pipes is, your company's value and just your business flow and your marketing and your sales and all these different things. And your constraint is the pipe that is clogged or has some sort of issue with the flow. And so all business is just going through and clearing and widening and changing these pipes to make sure that you don't have that single choke point. And then as the flow increases, you'll have a different choke point on a different pipe. And your goal is to go and clear that one as well. And that's all business is just removing these constraints one by one by one. And so really the thing is, they made you step back and said, what is the most important next step? If you can take a look back and say, let's look at this through the most practical lens. What is the constraint today? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it delivery? Whatever have you, focus on that thing first and nothing else matters. Focus on that thing. So that was kind of the big overarching picture. The next thing, and I briefly talked about this, but they basically said that in order to build a sale-ready company, if you have something that's good to sell, it's good to run as well. So I already talked about kind of that house analogy, but really, you're just like, wow, this is not that bad anymore. I really like this. And so phase one was kind of, they talked about growth with value accelerants, like how do we increase recurring revenue? How do we make our margins bigger and thicker so that it's more appealing? And then also, they said around $5 million in EBITDA, which is just a fancy number for profit, $5 million in EBITDA. Then you really start looking at the value detractors. So key man risk, single channel risk with marketing, or maybe you have an affiliate or a referral program where all of your leads are coming from. Those are big deals, but they said, don't worry about it until you're at $5 million in profit. And that was, to me, very reassuring. I really liked that. And then as a result, you get a business that buyers or banks love and founders enjoy operating, which I think is kind of the end goal, right? Whether you want to sell it or whether you want to keep it and run it, it's both a joy to run and it's easy to sell. That's a win-win. Okay. So having said all of that, I wrote down 10 major key takeaways that I got from the conference. And there were so many, so many, but these were like the big items for me. So for number one, the key takeaway for me was double down on what already works. So one thing that they said was they gave the analogy of, and I'm going to butcher this, but like a boxer. And essentially there was a guy, there was a coach, and he was saying, don't get cute. Don't try and do all these like left hooks and kicks and like these crazy like subtle jabs and all these things. He's like, don't get cute. Just double down on what works. The thing is that everybody gets bored and they're just like, let's try this, or maybe let's do a new product line, or let's like do this and let's do that. And like, oh, this isn't a scalable model. And so we need to change this. And the thing is, don't get cute. They said, don't worry about scaling until you have a scaling constraint. And most of the time, that's not the constraint. So don't uproot your whole model and do this whiz bang, cool, fancy thing. Just double down on what works. Do not get cute. So he said the order of operations is cash first, leverage later. Cash first, leverage later. I'm like, okay, that was all right. Like focus, double down, do exactly what you need to do. Okay. The other key takeaway, number two, is they said escaping the swamp. They said 1 to 3 million is really like this swamp mode. You just feel like you're just like trudging through like the mud. And the main reason why is when you're between 1 and 3 million, you don't have enough money to hire top talent. And so when you don't have top talent, the business does not really run as efficiently because you don't have top talent. And so the reason they call it the swamp is because you don't have money to hire top talent. And so you as the operator or the business owner, you kind of just have to brute force your way through it. And you just have to double down. And then, you know, people try and like divert this and they try and like step around it and sidestep it with these fancy tactics. And really they said, it's just a distraction. All you have to do is just double down, embrace the suck, and just push through it. And once you get to around 2 to 3 million or above that, then you can kind of like lift your head up, or your head above water and be like, okay, I can breathe. Now I can hire some people to come in and replace me so that I'm not like working like a dog and we're just working to the bone. And that, again, to me was very comforting. I really liked that. Okay. The other thing they talked about was one offer, one channel, one avatar to $1 million. And I had heard this before, right? Like if you're a Hormozi follower, he talks about that frequently in his YouTube and podcasts and all that different kind of stuff. But I was under the impression that $1 million meant $1 million per year. And they clarified and said, no, that's $1 million a month. And I was like, oh shit, that is very different than I was expecting. And so basically they're like, just focus on one customer type, one client acquisition strategy, one channel, whether that's YouTube or podcast or whatever, until you're at $1 million a month. And I was thinking, whoa, that is way larger than I was expecting. I was really thinking, okay, $1 million a year, then you can start branching out to Facebook ads or whatever this. They said, don't, like, you're just getting distracted. I was like, that was an interesting, clarification for me. Another takeaway was they talked about this velocity testing rule. And this was just kind of like an interesting little moniker for me. They said, for every $10,000 that you spend per month in ads, you need to be creating 10 new creatives per month. I was like, ooh, that's really interesting. They said most teams, myself included, under iterate, meaning they do not do enough, like just volume, enough velocity to get the reps in. I was like, I'm not even at $10,000 a month in ad spend. And like, I don't know if I've changed my creative or thrown new creative at Facebook or Google in like months. And so that was a really big takeaway for me. Number 5, they talked about more, better, different. All of it just kind of comes down to like, don't be cute, don't be fancy, focus on what works. And so they said, just do more of what works. And then if that doesn't work or it's time to pivot and you need to grow and scale, then do better at what works. Like, can you improve your onboarding? Can you improve your marketing? Can you improve this? And then the last ditch effort is doing something different. And he said, very rarely do people even get to different. They need to be doing more and they need to be doing better. And then they can try different, but don't even focus on different, just do more and better. And I'm very guilty of that because I, again, want to get cute. You want to like switch over here and let's try this and let's try that. More, better, different. Very good. The other thing they talked about was stop solving tomorrow's problems. So things like key man risk and sellability and stuff like that. I know I've already touched on that, but they said all that doesn't even matter until you're at $5 million in profit. Don't even think about that. Don't solve tomorrow's problems. Just focus on the problem today. They said, park the thought, hit the milestone. That was really good. Okay, there was a very humbling moment for me during the conference. So they give you kind of this workbook and they have you like put in, okay, your revenue and your number of employees and this and your lifetime value and your CAC and all these different things. And basically what they do is they give you all these formulas, you put in like the numbers for your business, and at the end, it all adds out to showing you roughly what the company is worth. And what's funny to me, and again, this was really humbling, was I looked around and like there were all these people that it felt like as I was looking at them, just at the, the crowd, the audience, when they were talking about LTV, lifetime value, like I feel like people's like light bulbs turned on or like the CAC, their light bulbs turned on. And to me, that was really like, I was like, really? These people don't know how to like calculate lifetime value or the cost to acquire a customer. And then I started to realize these people are 10 times bigger than me. Like they have $10 million in revenue. And here I am acting all high and mighty, like, oh, I know how to calculate these numbers. And so look at me, I'm so good at business. And the thing is like, sometimes it doesn't really matter. Like I probably clearly suck at other things because they were way, way, way bigger than I was. Anyway, I don't know if that was like necessarily a key takeaway that's like applicable to you, but for me, that was very humbling. I was like, I kind of thought like, like I'm somewhat educated, like I have a college degree and all these things. And so I was just like, I had this ego moment, like, okay, I've got this level up on people. And I realized I really don't because they know things about business that I don't, because clearly they're much farther ahead of me. So that was, anyway, humbling. Another takeaway that I took was I need to learn to guard my calendar like Alex does. There were, just as I was listening to the different like items and topics, there were no photo ops. There were no random Zooms. There were no like, Alex is laser focused on his calendar and there's no interruptions. Like he only takes the highest leverage tasks. And I realize I don't do that. For example, my Slack reactivity, like if somebody sends me a Slack message, I respond in 30 seconds flat. All of these little like notifications and pop-ups and dings here and texts here and emails here and this, there, like my focus is just scattered all day long because I'm constantly getting distracted. And that was a big takeaway, is like Alex shuts out all of his different attention. He turns off all of his notifications. He's like, what is the task today that moves the business forward? And when you're not constantly like reacting, you can be proactive and focus on the tasks that really move the needle. So that was a big takeaway for me. They talked about unreasonable empathy in sales, which was really interesting because I always look at sales as like, I'm the authority figure and my job is to like persuade and change these people's minds. They're like, that's not it. Like, you're not trying to trick these people. Really what they said is like, you are there to be empathetic. And so oftentimes they said when somebody gives you an objection for why they're not going to do a thing or buy some certain thing, oftentimes it's based off fear and not logic. And so one of the questions they said was, ask your prospect, what are you worried might happen? And they really just like hit home, like, you are not trying to convince or persuade or dissuade this person to doing a certain thing. Like, just be a human being. Like, just talk to them like a human and treat them like you'd want to be treated. And for me, I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting frame. I definitely, and not like a slimy car salesman vibe, but like, I do feel like, like maybe if I learn this tactic or say something different, then maybe I can be better at sales. And like, just stop, just be a human, like just be realistic and hold their hand and walk them through and help them understand what you're trying to sell them. So that was an interesting frame for me. Okay, last key takeaway for me were they said referrals signal true status. So a lot of people are quick to give testimonials, but a testimonial is not the same as a referral. And that was interesting for me. If someone leaves you a review or a testimonial, that's one thing. Like, that's easy, right? Like, it's very surface level and you can say, yeah, this person's great, whatever. But when people refer you to another customer or company or whatever, that is a sign of true status. And I was like, ooh, that's really interesting, because what that intrinsically is saying is if somebody is willing to refer you to another customer, they say, I trust this guy. I've had great business dealings with him. You basically want to aim for your clients to be proud to like flex by introducing you and be like, oh yeah, I know this guy and he is great. And I was like, very interesting frame for me. So these are kind of some extra like bonus points, but one thing that was very like powerful to me was the team focused a ton on data, like tons on data. And that was an eye opener for me because I definitely don't track KPIs as well as I should. And they said, if you can't track the data, you're not really in business, in the sense that like business is a series of numbers and metrics. And as long as you are tracking them and charting them over months or years or whatever, like you have a thriving live business. But they kind of posed this question to the audience. They said, okay, what's your LTV to CAC ratio? Or what was your revenue last month? And how does that compare to 6 months ago? And all these different things. And basically they said, if you cannot pull up a dashboard or a report or something like that, it's not automated enough and you're not tracking the metrics as closely as you should. So what they showed was this dashboard, and basically they can go to this website and they can see all of their metrics in real time across all of their portfolio companies. And I was like, wow. And basically they said, if you have to take the time to you're like, okay, well, let me talk to accounting. Let me pull this from QuickBooks and let me take the data out of our CRM and put it aggregate these together. And then I can calculate churn. Like they said, no, if you're doing that and you have to go to all these different places, you're not tracking the metrics enough. It should be a report that is sent to you automatically, not something that you have to actively reach out and compile. And so for me, that was like, ooh, okay, I really need to focus on that because data is everything. And without it, you don't really have anything. So that was really important. So they track data such as EBITDA, like monthly, and they also track the LTV to CAC ratio every month, which was huge. And they basically just said as you do these things, you will have a business that you come to love and it will be very valuable. All of that, just like, wow, 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 wow. That is so interesting. Mind blowing. Okay. Those were my key takeaways from the event, but there are also some random takeaways that I thought I should also discuss. So at the end of each day, you do get a Q&A session with Alex. And what was interesting was Alex was infinitely more funny in person. And I don't know why that was, but maybe he comes across as very serious on his videos or podcasts or things, which I don't know if that's intentional or not, but the dude was funny. He was very funny. He was also incredibly charismatic. He was very kind. He did not like cut you off. He didn't make you feel stupid. It was just a very, very genuine, which I don't know why he doesn't come across that way in videos. The other thing that I noticed is the dude is jacked, and like, no duh, right? Everybody notices that, but for whatever reason in person, like, holy shit, his arms are like tree trunks. Like I cannot, my goodness, like you see his muscles on screen, but then you see him in person, like, oh, I can see, like, this dude is just chiseled. Anyway, so as far as like him being super serious, I thought it was interesting. I probably like he gets this persona from like the hustle culture, like, you know, the hustle bro, like grind, like we're going to like paint our windows black and put on our headphones and like put on our blinders and we're just going to like grind and we're just going to work 20 hours a day. He's just a goofy, great guy. And I was really surprised by that. The other thing that at least just takeaways I took from Alex was I've noticed, at least on the internet and different like threads and things that I've read, unfortunately in the area of business, like you just can get some slimy people. You kind of get this like sleazy car salesman vibe, or people are like, is this guy the real deal? Is he just like selling me a course or like whatever? No, after meeting him in person, like he's the real deal. He's not selling snake oil. You can tell that he is a master of business and he loves the game of business. And he's not just like, it's not a get rich quick scheme. At least that was like the feeling that I got from him. So anyway, I thought all of those were interesting for me. Okay. So wrapping all of this up, the pros of attending. For me, the cool key takeaway was the room kind of helped me raise my standards in the sense that, yes, we were in a room of 100 different founders, but I kind of went in thinking like, okay, like I know a thing or two about business, like business is good, but then you see these other people that are just like crushing it and they're doing 25 million a year. And you would look at them and you're just like, these dudes are no different than me, but clearly they're way different than me because they are doing so much better. So for me, it was really a humbling experience just because like I was one of the smallest fish in the room. I was like, whoa, I've got some work to do. So for me, that was a huge pro of attending. Like I've got to like kind of expand my vision and realize, all right, I've got some work to do. I loved the idea of the value acceleration method. Like I liked that it was applicable at $100,000 businesses and $10 million businesses. I liked that it's just a simple reusable framework that you can apply to pretty much anything and everything. So that was really cool to me. The other thing that I liked was it was kind of like a behind the scenes look at a world-class funnel. So most people have a funnel and it's like, okay, you run an ad to a landing page and a landing page like has an opt-in form and then you give them a phone call and then you like follow up with them and then you try and pitch them or sell them or whatever, right? This whole process was just a snapshot of like a funnel that works so incredibly well. So I will say at the very end of the 2-day workshop, there was an upsell and it was expensive. It was a $35,000 upsell offer that like, hey, if you want to work more closely with us and my team one-on-one, this is what it takes. And this is the cost. And it's $35,000 and you get all these different things, whatever. But starting at the very beginning, like think about it. So Alex has thousands of pieces of free content out, just floating around, podcasts and YouTube and Instagram and TikToks, like he's everywhere. So that free content funnels into a $5,000 workshop. And then you go through the workshop and that $5,000 workshop funnels into a $35,000 mastermind. And then that mastermind funnels into them potentially buying or having some equity in your company. And so at a grand scale, I was just like, oh, I am a part of this funnel, but I didn't really feel like I was a part of a funnel, at least until like kind of the sales pitch at the end. And I don't want to say like slimy, but it did kind of leave me with like a negative taste in my mouth. And it probably shouldn't have. It was probably just me going in blind and not expecting that. So that was kind of something that caught me off guard. But honestly, if I was in the same like position, I would probably do the same thing too. Like, why not? So anyway, for whatever reason, that was really cool just to see like a start to finish funnel. And I thought that was valuable for whatever reason. And then the last pro that I saw of attending the conference was authority means clarity. And so there were questions that I asked, like the director of sales and the director of marketing and things like that. And just a 15-minute conversation with them killed like weeks of second guessing. And it's like, should I do this or should I go down this avenue or should I do this? And they're like, stop it. You don't make any money. Just do this. And I was like, got it. Okay. And it was so validating knowing like they do this all day long. They have the skills, they have the expertise. It was very eye-opening and humbling, and it really helped me narrow my focus, which I loved. Okay, cons of attending, if there are any cons. Cons, I would say, was like just the travel and the drag of like being away from family and the cost and lost productivity and things like that. Do I think it was worth it? 100%. I learned so much. And like I said in the beginning, I've already more than made up the difference in the cost that I spent based on the things that I learned. But it is something that you should think about is like, it's not cheap. There is lodging and flights and travel and all that kind of stuff and just taking time away from family. One thing that I didn't love was they were very adamant, like there are no recordings, there are no photos, and they were moving so fast that I feel like I would have gotten more if it had been slowed down or I was allowed to type or take better notes. And not that you can't take notes, you can write down, but you can't type. They won't let you have any laptops or computers out, which I get. They're like, focus on the stuff. But like they would go through the slides so fast. And I feel like if I had a copy of the slide deck or anything after the fact, like I could just have gotten so much more out of the conference. So honestly, I feel like if I were to go and attend again, I would get even more just because like they were going so fast. And so for me, that was a con. I wish it would either slow down or the ability to take photos or notes or something just because there was so much. Another con that I didn't like was, and granted, like within reason, right? Like when you're running a workshop at this scale, there's going to be economies of scale that make things difficult. For example, there are 100 like alpha males in this room and there are 10 coaches, and it's really like survival of the fittest to kind of speak up and ask a question. And so they'll do like an hour or two presentation, and then there'll be a 15-minute break, and the whole room just like flocks to these individuals like, hey, can I ask you this question or this question or this question? And if you're not on top of it and like willing to kind of trudge forward and do those things, you're going to get kind of pushed to the side, which for me is fine or whatever. But if you have like specific help that you really needed with like this very specific scenario, it is difficult. There's so many people in the room and just so few coaches or leaders or whatever you want to call them that I didn't love. I wish there was more one-on-one time, but again, I get it. Like there's 100 people in the room. You don't have time to do that. So, and then the very last thing, it was kind of a con, was I did feel like you have very limited direct access to Alex in the sense that Alex's sessions were somewhat scripted. For example, the Q&A session, they had pre-picked people that they thought their questions were interesting to ask Alex those questions. And again, I get it. I really do. 100 people asking questions, Alex, A, you'll probably have stupid questions. B, there's just not enough time. But that to me was kind of a letdown. There was probably 8 to 10 different people that they had pre-picked. They were kind of sitting on the back row. I mean, granted, they were real people from the seminar. It's not like they were like planted people by any means, but they had pre-picked those, and only those people got to ask questions to Alex, which for me, that was kind of a downside. There were no selfies, no like meet and greet with Alex. Again, I think that's just to respect his time. Totally get it. But that to me was a con. Layla was also not there, which fine. Like granted, I get it. Like all this has a little asterisk in it, right? Like there's caveats that they are running massive companies. They don't have time to just like shake hands with 100 different people, but just different than I expected. And that's okay, but just different than I expected. So all that to say, wrapping up, should you go to the event? I would say for the most part, if you are a business owner and you have something to sell to someone, I would say yes, you would find value in it. Some of like the key takeaways I thought was like, if you are at kind of a revenue plateau or you're kind of unclear what your next like step is in business, yes, 100% go. If your ambition is to get to like multiple 7 figures and to scale and to eventually sell, yes, absolutely. And if you are ready to like take the advice that they give and implement things right away on day 1, Monday morning, yes, absolutely go. I would say skip the event if you already kind of know your constraint, like what's holding you back in the business. just fix it. Maybe you don't need the event, or at least not yet. The other thing is like, if you just want to run like a lifestyle business and your goal is to make like $20,000, $30,000 a month, and you don't really have these like grand aspirations of scale, then maybe not. Like, I want to grow this thing to be huge. And if that's not you, then maybe skip it. Probably isn't for you. And then lastly, if the travel or the time or the cost outweigh like the live event energy for you, then again, probably not for you. So all that to say, for me, it was an incredible event. I am 110% glad that I went. It was invaluable for me. Just the rubbing shoulders with people, the different key takeaways that I took for my business, and the different things that I've already implemented and still am working on implementing. 100%. So incredibly value. Just, I like rubbing shoulders with other entrepreneurs. It was cool being at the venue. The food was awesome. And if nothing else, you get a fun trip to Vegas for $5,000 to $10,000. So for me, 100% worth it. So I really hope this was valuable for you. Like I said, I know this is the Lendr podcast. We talk about private lending specifically. These may not be as like private lending specific, but I think there are still definitely some key takeaways that you can use from this and apply to your business. So if you have any questions about the event or any issues that you're having or things that I can help with, please reach out. That's podcast@joinlendr.com. And until then, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.